All right. It is 7 PM, so we'll call the meeting to order. I'll start out with the roll call. Mr. Chamorro,
Here.
Mr. Fortin,
Present.
Kelleher,
Here,
Mr. Bernardi is excused, hopefully to join us later. Mr. Bradrick,
Here.
Mrs. Waz is excused. Unfortunately, she is under the weather. Mrs. Perkins Cutler,
Here.
Mr. Sheed, you are here and you are seated at Mr. Bernardi's request in his place. And myself, Mr. Doherty, I am here. All right, the next order of business would be to seat an alternate if necessary, and it is not necessary because they were pre-designated. So we'll move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2021 regular meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
so moved.
Moved.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
If I'm not the motion maker, I second it.
Ditto.
Okay. So we have Mr. Kelleher and Mr. Chamorro. All right, discussion. Roy?
I believe in the minutes it states that the participation in the Freedom of Information session was required. I believe it should be requested. That's the only change I have.
All righty. Anyone else?
Roy, for the minutes, can you point out what paragraph and so forth that is?
It's under the correspondence and announcement.
Yep,
Mr. Doherty reminded the Board of Finance members that they are required, could say requested to attend the
Got it.
update on the FOI. In lieu of that, they may review it on tape.
got it.
Okay,
Got it. Thanks, Mike.
all right, David. Any other corrections? Any omissions or additions? Hearing none, I'll take a vote count. Mr. Chamorro,
Aye.
Mr. Fortin,
Aye.
Mr. Kelleher,
Aye.
Mr. Sheed,
Aye.
Bradrick,
Aye.
and I also vote aye, so that's unanimous.
Really should put it.
Next order of business is public comment instructions. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, or just as a reminder for anyone who has participated in the past, public comment will be taken under item number 8. If you are viewing this online, it would be great if you would mute yourself until you're called upon to speak. You can just leave the mute on and use your space bar to unmute as you speak. When you speak, please identify yourself. Anyone who is joining us online can type in comments at any time. They won't be read until we get to item 8, but you may in fact type them in at any time. And when we come to the comments portion, if you are joining us by phone, you would have to hit *9 to indicate raising your hand so we know that you wish to speak. All right. We'll move on to new business. Excuse me, old business. Looking at last month's. All right. Old business. Item number 6, A, update on the state budget. Karen or Jay, have you heard anything? No?
The only thing that I'm waiting for is more confirmation on the American Rescue Plan. I've been kind of going back and forth with Janice, trying to figure out exactly, when we do get these fundings, what will be considered, something that we can reimburse or something we can purchase with the funds. From my understanding, we're not entitled, which just means we have 50,000 in population, under 50,000 in population. So if we do get the funding, it will come from the state. The federal government will give it to the state will distribute it to the municipality. Going by the information that I have received, it looks like the town to get about 775,000. I believe the Board of Ed is earmarked for about 1.3 million. But again, we're just kind of still waiting for more information. Janice, I'm not sure if you have any updates that you want to share.
No, I don't, none at this time.
Okay, and that's really all I have on updates on the state.
All right.
Can I get those numbers again?
Yep, it was about, don't quote me for accuracy, but it was about 775,000 for the town. And I think about 1.3 million for the Board of Ed. But again, these are just some
Preliminary.
pieces of preliminary information that I've received.
Karen, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
And it's spread over 2 years.
Yes. Yeah, we're supposed to get, I think, 50% the first year and another 50%, and then we have to expend it by 2024.
Right.
That's really about all I have right now on the update from the state.
Okay.
Thanks. The clarification is helpful.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Fred, you got your hand up? Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Could Karen she touched on what an entitlement is for those who didn't spend their life in government. Maybe she could just explain a little bit what an entitlement jurisdiction is versus non-entitlement.
Yes, I can do that, Fred. So basically, an entitlement municipality is a municipality that has over 50,000 in population, and a non-entitled government municipality is anybody that has under 50,000. So basically what happens is when you are considered an entitlement municipality, the funding from this American Rescue Plan will be distributed directly from the federal government to those municipalities. Anybody that's considered non-entitled, which is again under 50,000 in population, the funding will go from the federal government to the state. And I think they have about 60 days to do so. And then the state has 30 days to distribute those funds to the municipality. Any other questions?
All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next update on the local bridge project.
I guess that's me. Right now, I have spoken with our financial advisor just to give us some options as far as the type of financing we may wish to engage in when it comes time to go out for the local bridge project. Because this is going to be a multi-year project, speaking with the financial advisor, I had asked, would it be best for the town to possibly lock in at a low rate and go to a direct bond versus a note, because it's a lot less expensive with fees over the long run. So basically, when we initially start with what they call a bond anticipation note, it's usually a 12-month note. There's no actual payment until we roll over to a bond. There's no principal payment on that note. There's interest payment, but there's fees associated, attorney's fees and financial advisement fees. And you can roll that over up to 2 additional 12-month periods. So in the long run, that may actually cost more for the town in fees. And we don't know what the interest rates will be, 2 years thereafter. So it's not unheard of for a town to go directly to a bond. A lot of the interest rates right now are really low. It might be a great time to lock in. The biggest delay is just finding out when we're going to get actually started with moving on with these projects. And one of the delays is that we have to work on an easement with a resident whose property abuts the Peak Brook Road Bridge. So once that particular easement is settled, I guess is the word per se, then we would be able to start the bid documents for the local bridge project themselves. And then at that same time, I would start working with the financial advisor and the bond council to start securing, whatever best rates we could get and best options that we would have to get the financing. Any questions? Okay.
Very good. We will move on to the next order of business. Item C was update on the request for the town hall emergency expenditure. Do we have any more information on that as regards to the heating system?
No, it's basically we're waiting for the heating system season to be over. And then we can shut it down for a couple of days and then do the permanent repairs to the system. And that's about it. The town hall, the front lobby, that's complete. Everything's done, crash bars, exit signs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's done. It's basically, it's just a heating system.
Yeah, we had
We'll wait.
gone over the other previous meeting, so.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions? Hearing none. All right. Any updates on the governor's executive orders?
The executive orders, the ones that he has out there, some will sunset April 19th. Others we believe will be extended. Nobody knows at this point. As you know, a lot of things have been opening up recently as far as numbers in restaurants. A lot of the colleges are planning outdoor graduations, indoor places of worship, et cetera, et cetera. Those numbers have all changed just in the last week or so. But overall, the executive orders, which we've lived under for a year, as I said, some are going to sunset,
yeah,
and some may be continued. We don't know which is what, and it hasn't been announced yet. So it's standby to standby.
That would be how it went the last time they were supposed to sunset. It was last minute is when we heard. All right. Any questions, anyone? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to new business. Item 7A, the combined budget presentations.
Oh, you want me to go first?
We will let you go first because
Oh,
you
thank
gave
you.
yours first
Thank
to
you.
begin with. So we'll hear from the town first, then the Board of Education.
Okay, let me just get my papers together. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, oh no, it's just, it is ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Okay, you've got a copy of the general government budget, which we had on March 9th. And for everybody else, new people that are attending tonight, what I'm going to do is just basically review what I did on March 9th. On page 1, under selectmen, there would be an increase in salaries of 2%. On page 2, under the assessor, increase in salaries 2 to 3%. There was a desire for a part-time summer intern based on 10 hours per week for 16 weeks would be $2,400. Again, for those of you that were not with us for the last presentation, I should reiterate, last year we went through the budget, we met with the department heads, and Karen and I went through line by line and discussed with them what was essential, what was desired, et cetera, et cetera. We presented to the Board of Finance what we thought was a fair, balanced budget. The Board of Finance instructed us to go back and cut a number of areas, which we did. Now, this year, what we did is we met with the department heads. They had a list of their desires for the various departments. We did not do anything with those. We basically took their requests and put it on the general government budget that was presented to the Board of Finance. And now for the rest of you, you will be seeing that tonight. So I just want to show the difference between last year and this year. Okay, getting back to the tax collector on page 3, there'd be an increase in salaries of 2%. One full-time assistant tax collector, which would include benefits. It's no overall increase to staff. The increase is reflected on page 11 in the pension and insurance line items. And this would resolve having 2 part-time employees. The tax collector feels that this would better meet her needs. Page 4 under finance, no increase in salary for the department head, and a 2% increase for staff. A stipend for a part-time elected treasurer up to $6,500. The department head would be the finance director. On page 6 under election, increase in part-time staff, possible extra poll workers for local elections due to COVID restrictions. And again, that's been something we've been living with for a year and continue to do so. That would be $35.80. Also an increase in materials and supplies, $2,050. On page 11, insurance and benefits, Social Security, Medicare, and this would be derived from salary increases, $7,854. A new cyber policy split with the Board of Education for $7,500. As you're all aware, cybersecurity is a major nationwide threat to municipalities, hospitals, federal government, state government, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to meet that need. Also under benefits, pension would increase from 14.95% to 16.44% and represents an increase of $36,113. That includes full-time tax collector assistant and adding 1 more highway driver, laborer, and assistant mechanic. Health insurance would increase from $40,538, and that's a 3% increase, plus the cost of additional full-time staff and not using reserve funds. Again, under benefits, Teamsters Union A7 Health, $23,192, and that would be adding 1 new driver, laborer, and assistant mechanic. Under land use on page 14, we're creating a new department to address all land use needs. The growth in town over the last couple of years has been tremendous. And what we're looking at is a land use office, which would include zoning technicians, technicians singular for 29 hours per week. There'd be no medical or pension benefits included. We would still have a part-time zoning enforcement officer and a wetlands agent. But again, the needs of the town show that we need to increase those. That would be it'd be $34,944. And then training for part-time staff to become a certified technician would be $3,000. What that would mean in land use is we'd have a tech that would be there 29 hours a week, be preparing a lot of the reports and a lot of the forms that would have to be signed by the zoning enforcement officer and the wetlands agent. Those 2 individuals would be coming in part-time. They'd be doing office work, but also site visits and inspection in the community. Page 18, general government boards, open space land acquisition fund. We'd be adding $27,500 to that. Under the building department, increase the hours and salary for the building official, $6,426. Increased salary for staff, $3,590. Under fire protection on page 21, we'd like to preserve the recruitment and retention program. There'd be an increase in basic services of electricity, fuel, telephone, training, etc. That's reflective of the increases the rest of us have in our own homes. And it'd be an overall increase of $12,890. Public safety on page 23, we're looking at two options. Option one, this is for EMS service. There would be an increase of $98,318, and that would give us coverage of 24-hour, 7-day service. The second option would be an increase of $3,760, and that's to maintain the current coverage and payroll. Under highway, on page 24, add a 10th driver, laborer, assistant mechanic with the Teamsters, and that includes benefits. Increase in salary for the current driver laborer position to become assistant foreman. That would allow one of the individuals to be trained to take on more responsibility when the foreman is not available. Overall staff salary increase of $69,609. And we're adding a line for tree removal and maintenance of $50,000. That has been a separate line for years, and there's been a lot of discussion in the past about why is it a separate line? So that's been added to the highway department. Public health, recreation, and welfare on page 28. Northeast District Department of Health, $9,800. As you all know, we've been working very closely with them over the last year related to the COVID situation. They've been offering a number of webinars that we've attended, suggestions to us on how best to meet the need of the town and in the town hall and the town employees. Libraries, the 4 libraries combined would be $15,920. Overall, we would have significant decreases. In the tax collector's office on page 3, there'd be a decrease of $5,500, and that's reducing the number of staff going from 2 part-time to 1 full-time. The town hall, another decrease. Town hall part-time staff, based on decrease in hours for a recording clerk, would be a savings of $4,900. Environmental on page 26. This is Coatney Hill contractual services. A decrease in groundwater testing and reporting, $11,000. I should note that this savings was not something that we cut service to save money. This was suggested by the company that does the testing, and they felt that it is stable enough and has kind of slowed down that they could decrease the number of tests a year that they do. So that would save us $11,000. Under a redemption of debt on page 29, interest savings on a highway bond, it was refunded last August. K through 4 renovation bond was satisfied for the elementary school, and that was satisfied August of 2020. And there's no continuing disclosure. We no longer have a public bond, and the overall savings in redemption of debt, $98,913. General government budget increases $367,295, or about 7%. Decrease in debt is $98,913, or 22.5% savings. The total overall budget proposal represents approximately 5% increase, or $268,382 over last year, the last fiscal year. Couple of notes here. We're currently in the process of union negotiations with AFSCME, and we're hoping to do a memo of understanding with the Teamsters to extend their current contract for one more year. We're hoping that the negotiations will be settled about the time that this budget is approved. So all overages would need to be funded through the contingency fund. So do we have any questions about general government?
Fred, do you have any questions?
No,
David?
No, I asked my questions on the meeting on March 9th.
Okay, Mr. Kelleher?
Just a quick one, Jay, if you wouldn't mind, can you just repeat the total or the net request increase for the selectmen's budget?
Selectmen specific would be 2%.
And what was the amount?
I don't have the amount. It's
No,
on
he
the
means-
page.
You just read it.
No, he means the total selectmen's budget increase, the 268,382.
The general
Yeah.
government.
General government.
Sorry, general government. 268,382.
Thank you.
And again, let me just be sure that people understand, that was not selectmen, it's general budget.
No, I understand that. Yes, I
Okay,
understand. that. Sorry.
no, I just didn't want anybody else going off, you
Okay.
know.
No, I get it. Thank you, Jay.
Mr. Broderick?
I have concerns over the selectmen's budget. However, I'm going to address those after we hear the Board of Education's budget. I think it's a situation where they should be considered together, at least in my mind. Thank you.
All right,
Okay,
Mr. Chad?
I'm just curious on the EMS coverage. What is our current coverage?
Currently, it's 102 hours per week with 66 hours covered by volunteer shifts.
Thank you.
Mrs. Perkins Cutler? No questions? All right. All right, hearing none, then we will go over the Board of Ed budget. Janice, are you going to present that?
Yes.
Would you be able to share out our screen?
Yes.
I'll just pop up the presentation. All right, and we'll have Janice walk you through it.
Thank you.
We're starting on page 4 of our original presentation with the staffing increase that we're requesting.
Right, basically going over the presentation that we did the other night. We are asking for 1 intervention teacher at the elementary school and 2 paraprofessionals. And that is for $88,106 is the cost of those 2 individuals. Or 3 individuals, I'm sorry. Next slide. The Woodstock Academy, which is the bulk of our high school tuition. There are other high school tuitions that are increasing based on the number of students. But the Woodstock Academy is the lion's share of that line item. Regular education cost is increasing 76,250. And that's basically because we have 1 new student over last year. And we have 4 special ed students that last year were classified as special ed students and this year they're not. So that they go from the special ed worksheet over to the regular ed. So the total of those, that tuition increase over last year is 76,250. The regular education enrollment at the academy is 422. The elementary school, we have the second year of our reading program, 48,665. We have union contractual increases of 26,803. And we have supplies and professional development increases. Last year, our budget was cut at the end of the budget process because of COVID, understanding that as well, that agree. That budget, our budget was cut 282,339. We were able to recognize a lot of cuts based on the fact that because of COVID, we didn't need to purchase a lot of supplies. We certainly couldn't go away with and do professional development, although there were some that were done virtually. But there has been a lot that have been basically free professional developments. Next year, we're anticipating that we need to replenish all those supplies that we didn't have to buy this year. Not saying we didn't buy supplies, but the supplies we did buy were covered under the COVID grants that we have been receiving. So we're going to need an increase in the elementary school of $109,032. In the middle school, again, we have contractual salary increases of $76,832. We are requesting additional intervention teacher, $52,095. We were going to, in last year's budget, purchase some musical instruments. And because of COVID, we postponed that, and that actually was cut from our budget when we had to cut the 282,000. So we put it back in this year's budget. We restored it in this year's budget, along with the same explanation, the supplies and the textbooks. We didn't need to purchase them last year, so that was cut. So we're estimating that we're going to be purchasing them again this year, for a middle school increase of 182,519. Special education, again, contractual increases in that category of 76,761. Transportation, transportation is done, special ed transportation is done by DATCO, Signature, and EastCon. We're anticipating, we know we're going to have an increase in DATCO because of the $100,000 vehicle credit that now goes away because we are done our initial contract, where the initial contract accounted for the purchasing of our fleet. And this was the fourth and final year that DATCO gave us $100,000 to purchase that fleet. So we know automatically that our DATCO expenditure is going to go up, although we are in negotiations with them as we speak to see what our contract will be for next year. Outplaced tuitions have either swapped tuition to a different location or have had increase in their tuition rates to the tune of about 3%. Some of our outplacements have increased their tuition or notified us that they're increasing their tuition. So that's $147,695. Supplies, $16,024, and professional development for $1,700, for a total special education increase of $278,564. Our health insurance is an increase of 3.5% over last year. We do have the Connecticut partnership. So I'm in other districts have been accustomed to a heck of a lot more of an increase in a year. So we've been told it's 3.5%, and we are at a regional pricing based on the state decided to take the pricing of our premium and based on regional costs. So in our area, we are paying a 0.5% increase in tuition because, in the premium, because we're in a region that costs more for medical expenses. So we have that 0.5% increase in our budget to make the 3%. It's 3% of a premium increase, annual increase, and 0.5 for our regional. So it's a 3.5% increase. This budget, this $234,831 increase includes the $162,000, which is the final closeout of our internal service fund. If you recall, the auditors are wanting us to close that out, and this will be the final year that will be doing that on our side. So it's going to be 162 and some odd. So I just rounded it to 162. We'll get the actual number when we go to close out the account. Another reason for the increase in the health insurance fund is that last year we saw 17 additional participants in our plan. And that was mostly because spouses lost their insurance, and spouses who may have been covering the whole family. So now therefore the individual that was working for us was now adding their spouse or or their children. So 17 of those participants are because of spouses, children, and we had a couple of teachers that started a couple of years ago that were under age 26. And as of, based on the insurance laws, when you turn 26, you then are not a dependent on your parents' insurance coverage. So you have to have your own plan, and a couple of those teachers aged out of their parents' plan and were on ours. So that's a $234,831 increase in health insurance. As I mentioned before, DATCO Insurance is, we're losing that vehicle credit. We are in negotiations, but for the purposes of the budget presentation, because we do not know what that increase is going to be, the cost of transportation is $148,430, an increase over last year. Maintenance, this was another area that we did some budget cuts last year. We took about $59,000 out of our budget, out of this particular category, to basically on the premise that there may be some of the repairs that we do may be major enough that they can be taken care of out of our non-lapsing fund. This year, rather than doing that again as of right now, we restored that $59,000 cut that we made and put it back in our budget. Not to say that we may not do it again. We wanted to restore those items because not all of them will be something that will be covered under the capital non-recurring. But the custodial increase is $14,774. They're contractual as well. And the repairs and maintenance and supplies are also increasing, as I just explained. That's $113,001. That's increasing maintenance over last year. And finally, this is our summary report. Basically taking all of those categories that I mentioned. The tuition is $166,000 increase, because not only, as I said, Woodstock Academy is not the only one there. There's Putnam High School and BOAG, QMC, and adult ed is also in that category. So the total between the Woodstock Academy and all of those others, which all of the BOAG and QMC are also receiving student increases over last year. The number of students that the seniors left and the freshmen that we anticipate going in is on an upswing. So that on top of the Woodstock Academy is a total of $166,000. We talked about special ed, we talked about elementary and middle. The district benefits and subs, that also in that line item is about 100,000 in sub costs, which this year we have been able to either move to the grants that the COVID grants, because our subbing is basically related to the COVID, to someone having COVID or quarantining. So we were able to, that was another area where we cut. And next year we may or may not have the funds available in our grant. As we mentioned earlier, we don't know the specifics on that grant. So we don't know whether it's going to be able to cover subs or not. So since we do roughly spend that much money every year, this needed to be added to the budget. So on top of the health insurance increase, we also had to restore all of the dollar amounts that we had put in there for subs. So that's total between the two is a $360,000 increase. District-wide supports are things like was mentioned in the government budget, where we have the retirement increase. That's our portion, the employer portion of the MERS account for basically our custodians and office staff. The teachers have the TRB, that's something completely different, but our portion of it went from 14.95 to 16.44. So that accounts for some of the increases in the district-wide support. We talked about transportation and we talked about maintenance. So our total over last year is 1.492 increase for a total of a percentage of 7.77%. Any questions so far?
Questions, Mr. Tamura,
None.
Mr. Fortin,
Not at this time.
Mr. Kelleher?
Again, just a real quick one. Janice, can you remind me the insurance increase? The net is 234. So does that mean it was actually closer to 390 and you're offsetting that with the reserve fund?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mr. Broderick?
Okay. I've listened to the presentations of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. And I must say, I am disappointed. I'm disappointed in both boards. Because what they have given us at this stage is a knowingly unrealistic budget. I'll go with the Selectmen's budget first because they presented first. The Board of Selectmen failed. They passed the buck to the Board of Finance. They did not prioritize anything that their department heads asked for. There is no suggestion in the proposed budget as to what the selectmen feel is important and worthy of our tax dollars. They just took a nice spreadsheet and said, here, ladies and gentlemen, this is to you. I think that opinion passes on to the Board of Education as a knowingly unrealistic budget. Nowhere do we see, but we will because we're going to look at the 5-year plan. We are not going to see the annual capital expenditure of Woodstock Academy of some $200,000 plus for the next 5 years, 1 million. And I'll address the Woodstock educational funding when it comes up on the 5-year plan. They also assumed, we will take $162,000 of the health care. So it's okay. We're really not going up because we're going to use that money. And the other thing that annoys me is the suggestion that we have to somehow go to the allowable, the Prop 46 limits. And we'll see those in a few minutes, which is the maximum amount we can tax our citizens. Nowhere, and that, at least by the figures that I have, these two budgets going in require a cut of over $1 million, $1,095,000, and that doesn't even address the 200 and some $1,000 that's going to the capital account for Woodstock Academy. So these two budgets come to the Board of Finance in the public presentation knowingly they've got to drop 1.2 million to reach the maximum cap that they can bleed from the taxpayers. And I think both boards failed to live up to their obligation to the taxpayers to give us a realistic budget prioritized for what we really can do. End of rant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broderick. This is Perkins Cutler. Questions?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Sheed?
No questions right now.
All right. Thank you. All right. Anybody else who I've already called on Mr. Kelleher. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I just quickly address Roy's points, which he called a rant, but I won't call it that. This seems to come up every year, and just this is my personal opinion. Being on the Board of Finance, I do appreciate hearing from the town hall, as well as from the Board of Ed, what they believe they need, what they really need. I think it is important that the Board of Finance knows what they would really like to have, even though we know with Prop 46 it may not be realistic. I do think it's important that the Board of Finance hears these numbers. Thank you.
Anyone else? The first selectman would like to make a comment.
You know, it's like being back in college and high school with the debate club, and now my rebuttal to my good friend, Mr. Bradrick. The issue that I mentioned previously, I mentioned it on the 9th, I mentioned it again tonight by way of intro, is Karen and I spent days meeting with the various department heads and spoke to them on what we felt was important for their particular departments. And as I said, we kind of went back and forth, but in fairness to those individuals, it's not up to me or to Karen to tell the department head what his needs are or her needs and how they feel in the future. So that's why, you know, I went along those lines and why I wanted to present to you, because last year, Karen and I came up with a budget that we had put a lot of work in, paring it down to what we felt was reasonable and appropriate. And then the Board of Finance came back to us and said we had to do additional work on it. So I thought, in fairness to the department heads, we would present this budget based on, after our discussions with those department heads, based on what they felt they needed to either maintain or, in a number of cases, expand the services they provide. So that's my my comment, I guess. And
All right, Karen would also like to make a comment. Mr. Fitzpatrick, go ahead.
One comment I would like to make is that both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen budgets were approved before the final Prop 46 even came out. Nobody knew what Prop 46 was going to allow until last Thursday, I believe, when I sent out the agenda. And at that point, both budgets were already approved. So now that we know what we have for actual funding based on Prop 46, it is realized we will have to go back and revisit our budgets and go through and make the necessary cuts to meet the allowable should the board choose to go that route. So, you know, to say that, you know, you're disappointed in two different boards who have worked diligently for years, every year we come and every year we explain, you know, what some of the needs are for the town. These needs come directly from department heads, boards and commissions, outside organizations. These are not numbers that we fabricate by putting on a spreadsheet. These are numbers that come directly from requests to the Board of Selectmen. And that is why we, as a team, felt it was necessary to show the Board of Finance what the true needs and wants for these department heads, boards and commissions really need or want for their departments, whether it's realistic or not.
Any other questions from the board? Megan?
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I realize I'm not on the Board of Finance, but I appreciate the recognition. I will not pile on, but I do want to echo what Jay and Karen just said. The Board of Education does work closely with our administrative team, who work closely with our teachers and other department heads. I believe this is an annual discussion at the Board of Ed level that we do realize that we might not receive the funding that we request, but we do feel like it is essential that we put forward a budget that shows the needs of the district and also the needs of a district that we think needs to move forward and improve. And I think we would be actually not doing our job if we had sent a budget to the Board of Finance on a presumption of what the Proposition 46 would be, to Karen's point that we didn't know. I think we would not be doing our due diligence and actually delinquent in our statutory requirement. So thank you.
All right, any other comments from board members? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item, which is the 5-year capital plans. Jay, you're up again.
Apologies, I have too many papers and too many notes on the back of papers. This was approved by the Board of Selectmen, and the total amount is $9,402,888. There's really nothing to present. The numbers are here. The members of the Board of Finance have a copy of it. We had mentioned the various highway projects, bridges, fleet operations, the fuel depot, transfer station. And then under general government, it's the benzene cleanup, which continues, reevaluation, which is going through. In fact, it just started this week. That's coming through NECOG. Fire protection, rescue and EMS, open space. Town hall improvements, I already covered. One thing that I had mentioned previously is the Crystal Pond Park Trout Pond, which is a deep mandate to us. They inspect all dams statewide and make recommendations to the owners. The commission at Crystal Pond Park has agreed with us, if you will, that putting money into that dam to preserve it is probably not the right way to go, and at some point we'll have to breach it. But as I think I explained on the last time we met, the amount of engineering that goes into that is expensive, and the actual breaching of the dam is expensive. So again, that's something that's hanging over our heads, but it will have to be approved. I don't know, I'm just going to open it up to questions. Roy, I think you had mentioned previously that you had questions about the 5-year capital improvement.
The 5-year capital improvement, I have no problem on the selectmen's side. I think it's misleading at best. The terms, I think it's Woodstock educational funding.
We'll wait till we get to the education 5-year capital.
Okay, I'm happy with Jay's side.
All right.
Mr. Chamara, questions?
Oh,
Mr. Fortin,
No, I'm okay.
Mr. Kelleher,
I'm all set.
and Roy, you're all set with the selectmen's? Okay. Mrs. Perkins Cutler?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right, and Mr. Shed?
All set.
All set. Okay, now we'll go on to the Board of Ed 5-year capital plan.
And like Jay had mentioned with the town side, our 5-year capital plan at the Woodstock Public Schools comes to a total of 3.6 million. And based on some of the discussion that we had last week, we're amenable to changing the project from Woodstock Education Funding. We were just looking for a generic term, but we can be more specific and call it Woodstock Academy Capital Cost. So that would be one change. And the other thing is that we're still bringing to your attention the need to address the Woodstock Middle School HVAC system, which is needing to be upgraded over the next several years because of its outdated nature and the fact that we can't get as many parts for it anymore because of all the controls and things of that sort that are necessary to keep it going. So those are the two major items to point out, but the change in the terminology for the Woodstock Academy capital cost was something that, that came up in last week's discussion. So any questions?
Mr. Chamara,
no new questions.
Mr. Fortin?
Yeah, Victor, just one quick thing. As part of that discussion we had on that particular line item, the Woodstock Educational Funding line item, are you going to also remove the other 4 years of projected costs, or do we have an itemized letter from the academy that describes these costs year over year so that we can demonstrate they're not?
That's a good point, Dave. We will remove the other years, and we have this upcoming year's itemized costs, so we can just put that in for next year and wait for the other years as they provide them.
That would be great. And one other thing is, can you provide the board with whatever letter you've gotten from the academy, that itemized letter of their projected costs for this year?
Oh, definitely. Yes, we received that last week.
Thank you.
Mr. Keller,
So it's all set for now, thanks.
all right. Mr. Braderick,
Yes, I think it's good that we're changing the terminology. However, I think the expense, because it keeps coming back and is projected to go, at least on paper, for 7 years, belongs in your budget, not as a capital line item. I don't mind bonding to give you a new heating, ventilation, air conditioning in Woodstock Middle School. I think that's reasonable. I think we're just misleading the world, calling this capital project from the academy onward. May I inquire, is there a current contract with the Woodstock Academy that makes that mandatory, or is that still in negotiation?
We are currently still in negotiation with Woodstock Academy on the contract, 5-year contract. So we'll keep you updated on that as we move along. Right now, that's where we are.
So at this juncture, there's no mandate that be funded.
I would just say that it's something that we need to address, and that's why we put it into the 5-year capital plan.
all set, Roy?
End of rant.
Mrs. Perkins Cutler,
Well, I'm just going through some mental machinations here. Do we have students that go to other high schools?
Yes, we do.
And-
Yeah, go ahead.
And so are we setting a precedent by contributing to capital improvements at Woodstock Academy, where it would be reasonable for the other high schools to expect us to also include capital expenditures for them, even though we have a fewer number of students going to them? I mean, it makes me uneasy seeing this set aside, and well, that's all really I want to say about it.
yeah, Mr. Shedd,
Yeah, I just agree with the points that Roy had made on that, on the funding of their projects over there. I think it should be tossed into the regular budget, I would think, but I agree. I agree with what he said.
my opinion is it's got to come to a head sooner or later here, and the sooner the better. But I think the key to this whole thing is what we end up, or what the Board of Ed ends up with, a contract with the academy. Because right now, I don't know where we could go with it, but I think that's one of the things that should be addressed in the future in the contract. And if in fact they are going to bill us for regular maintenances, then I think that there should be a cap negotiated in there, and it should be stated that that's what it's for. So much for tuition, so much for the maintenance and upkeep, which is, of course, in most cases, part of tuition, but they cannot use the maintenance of projects excuse to raise the annual tuition by more than a certain percentage rate. But that's something that the Board of Ed and their lawyers I hope are including in the discussion for upcoming contract. Anyone else?
Yeah, just real quick to Charlene's point. I don't know the exact figures, but I know Killingly High School, when they built a new school, they did pass on the capital costs as a separate item, at least to Brooklyn. And I'm imagining any other, well, probably Brooklyn would be the one sending town they pass it on to because they have so many students, but it's certainly not unprecedented. It's not just happening in Woodstock.
All right, any other board members? All right. We will move on to the next item. Item C, estimated revenues. This is Patrick.
Okay, so everybody should have a copy. There was like a whole packet that I sent you based on the grand list and how we calculate the increase in revenue that the grand list has created. And this particular draft of revenues was a little bit higher than my last preliminary, based on some updated information I received from the tax collector. At the time her and I spoke, when I drafted this last week, she was still stating that there may be a little bit of a decline in what she's collected to date just because of COVID. One of the executive orders had given us an extension till April 1st to collect taxes. So therefore, hopefully by the end of March and beginning of April, when Linda is finished with her collections, I'll be able to get more updated revenue at that point. I don't really think it's going to change much based on the estimates, but it may, influence the over and under column. Perhaps we received more than what I have put on here, collected to date, which could help increase the over under predictions. Again, a lot of the revenues are based on looking at the past 3 years, taking a estimate, and then I have decreased between 5 and 10% based on, the conditions of what's happening today. So, over the past year, we received a lot of money in conveyance tax. There's been a huge turnover in homes here in Woodstock, so that's driven that revenue up. But is that going to be the trend next year? There's a lot of houses right now that have sold, but there's barely any houses on the market in Woodstock. So, those things happen based on what's actually happening today, not trying to predict in 2 years or a year if it's going to continue the trend. Same thing with the building fees. Those permits, we've seen an increase in permits basically over the past year due to COVID. There's been a lot of people who are putting on renovations, installing pools, different things like that have increased the the revenue on that end. Other areas that have shown a little bit of increase would be landfill fees. We've increased, I think back in January, the permits for the transfer station have increased. Again, the town clerk is still collecting those. I think that the end of March, I should be able to have even higher numbers. And the other information, again, is just based on estimates of what we've collected over the past several years, and then taking an average and then, deciding if we should, go with that or decline it a little bit based on, past collections over the last 6 months here. There's just been a little bit of a decline. I think it's due to COVID. Hopefully by April 1st, Linda will have met her 97.5 collection rate and then some, which may help offset the budget, by the time we go to the final budget in April. So are there any questions on the actual revenues before I get to Prop 46?
Mr. Chamara?
No,
Mr. Fortin?
Well, you answered mine. This is not your final draft.
Mr. Kelleher?
I'm good for now, thanks.
Mr. Bradrick?
No questions.
Mrs. Perkins Cutler?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
And Mr. Shed?
No questions from me.
Okay, then that being the case, we will move on to item D, which is the Proposition 46 calculation. And That's you again, Karen.
Okay, so again, everybody has received a draft. And I can, go over this, step by step. But basically this calculation, including the ordinance that was attached to it, the estimated revenues, and the increase in the grand list all have been sent to our town attorney, Rich Roberts, for his blessing that it has been calculated correctly based on the ordinance. He did send his blessing the other day. That was forwarded to your Board of Finance chairman and to the first selectman. So basically, the calculation just black and white. We take last year's or this current year's budget, and then we look at different revenue increases that are allowed, which would be an increase from the grand list. We had $196,805. Increase in state grants. There really wasn't an increase in grants, and I can explain that a little bit. This current fiscal year, there was total disabled, additional veterans exemption, and the low SIP reimbursements that were not put on the actual revenue sheet because there was uncertainty whether or not we were going to get those. However, we received the total disability and the veterans exemption, and I applied for low SIP, and I want to say I'm 90% sure that should be coming in. So we will receive those in this current budget. So when I budgeted those for next year, I really don't consider that an increase because we're getting it already. So therefore, there is no increase in state grants at this time. Other income is based on, the lower half where it says other income on the revenue sheet, based on permits, conveyance taxes, and dog licenses, etc. There was a $41,000 increase. Again, this is a draft. This can change up until our final budget, April 13th. Speaking with Janice, her special ed increase and her increase in transportation, those are state mandates that make, that's exempt. And we have had no increase in debt. We don't have any emergency expenditures that I am aware of at this time. And we have no pending legal judgments that I am aware of at this time. So technically, if you take all of that together, it shows that the total increase that's allowed is $664,714, which means our maximum allowable budget cannot exceed $25,307,716. So when you take the education, general government, and the redemption of debt, those combined equal $26,403,589. With an allowable of $307,716. That leaves $1,095,873 in cuts that will need to be made between both boards in order to meet the allowable. Currently, based on my revenue sheet, we have approximately $24,141,751 in estimated revenue, which means if we go to the allowable, there'll be a shortfall of $1.1 million, which is equivalent to 1.62 mils. Any questions?
Mr. Tamara,
No,
Mr. Barton,
No, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kelleher.
Just real quick, I hope. Karen, do you expect any unspent monies in the town budget, or Janice, anything going to be returned from the Board of Ed that might? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I know it's too early to tell. It's not the end of the year, but just if you had a guess.
Well, so are you talking about an overage in the general fund from the collect extra revenue, or surpluses in either one of our expenditure sides?
Surplus at the end of the year, yeah.
Okay, so right now it's a little bit hard for me to tell with the revenues, but I would suggest that based on Linda's, our tax collector's past collections, I would like to think we will have some type of revenue overage than what we budgeted. And I can tell you that there will definitely be a surplus in the selectmen's expenditure side of the budget. One in particular, and I know that this was asked of me last week and I'm working on it to get the information, but the town had received some money, municipal CRF funds, which is the coronavirus relief funds. And part of those funds were used to reimburse the selectmen staff salary line item because the expense qualified as Crystal, who acts in that position. She's been spending more than 50% of her time working on COVID-related responding. So we were able to utilize that money to reimburse that line item. So that will be one area of a surplus. And of course, at the end of the year, you're aware that when the Board of Selectmen have a surplus, we ask for transfers, and most of the time, those go to CNR projects.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Broderick,
No questions.
Mrs. Perkins Cutler.
None here, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shed,
No questions.
no questions? All right. Very good. Takes care of that. Next item of business is to warn the public hearing. We plan to have a public hearing on the 6th of April at the Woodstock Middle School. It will be in person for those who care to attend, and anyone that wishes to join us via Zoom will also be able to do that. That information will be on the town website. So I'll read the official notice once again, as I did last week. Town of Woodstock notice of public hearing, April 6th, 2021, 7 p.m., Woodstock Middle School. The Board of Finance of the Town of Woodstock will hold a hybrid public hearing at the Woodstock Middle School on Tuesday, April 6th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in accordance with Section 7-344 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Itemized estimates of the expenditures of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education will be presented, and the Board of Finance will hear all persons who wish to be heard in regards to any appropriation which they are desirous that the Board of Finance shall recommend or reject for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. And this was dated here in Woodstock, the 16th day of March, 2021, and signed by myself, Michael Doherty, Board of Finance Chair. That covers that item. Next item, public comment. Do we have anyone who would like to make a public comment at this time? And we don't have any raised hands? Yeah. All right, it would appear we have no public comment. Therefore, we will move on to item 9, other from the board. Mr. Chamorro, you have anything?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Fortin?
Yeah, just one quick thing for Jay and the Board of Selectmen. I just want to thank him for this handout outline of the overall significant increases and decreases. I think it's real handy I do pour over your budget, but it's a real handy reminder of the particular areas you're looking at.
Mr. Kelleher?
Yeah, just, I keep meaning to ask, the meeting on the 6th, you're mentioning it's the middle school and hybrid. Can you just explain that?
Basically, what it's going to be is like a normal meeting for those of us that wish to attend. It hasn't been determined as yet whether it's going to be in the gymnasium or the cafeteria. The gym, I'm told now it's going to be the gym. But they have the audio video equipment down there. They've done some Board of Ed meetings in the past where they have actually broadcast some of their meetings. So they have the equipment that they can do it so that the public can join in from home if they don't wish to come out. But we will be doing it under the regulations of the current COVID restrictions. So we'll have the social distancing and everything in place. I'm assuming that we'll probably have three tables up at the top for the Board of Finance members. It will all be 6 feet apart, so there won't be any questions there. And everybody that comes to the meeting and takes part in it will be required to wear their mask except when they're speaking.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Broderick.
No questions.
Okay. Mrs. Perkins Cutler.
Yes, I do have one, just tracking back to our meeting on the 9th.
Yeah.
I believe that the Board of Finance requested the job descriptions for the finance director and the treasurer, as well as the comments from the town attorney regarding that change, and I don't believe we've received those yet. Are they forthcoming?
I will check on that and I will get them forwarded to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sheed,
No question.
no question. Okay. All right. Correspondence and announcements. The only things I have. Oh, Megan, I'm sorry. Didn't see you. Go ahead. Megan, go ahead.
I apologize. I wasn't, I should have brought this up during citizens' comment, but I wasn't sure where on the agenda the Board of Finance might or possibly talk about it. I don't get the impression this evening that either the Board of Ed or the Board of Selectmen will be receiving direction from the Board of Finance in regard to how Proposition 46 will be applied this year. And based on Karen's breakdown in her worksheet, it is apparent that reductions will need to be made.
Seriously.
If I could get some guidance from the Board of Finance and when the Board of Ed, I am the Board of Ed chair, but particularly the Board of Ed will hear. I know we do have a meeting scheduled for Thursday evening. I'm just trying to find out if we should be meeting Thursday evening. Should we be meeting prior to the public hearing, or where in this process we would receive the information? Thank you.
I don't know what the other board members' thoughts are on this, but if it were up to I would say you're probably shooting at numbers as in the past. So you're probably talking maximum split would probably be 85-15, and low end split in the favor of the Board of Ed would be 75-25. So somewhere in that ballpark is what's going to have to be reduced. And then after we hear what the public has to say at the public hearing, what their thoughts are on it, and if we have any change in what the revenue is, then it will be up to us to determine where we're going to go on the Proposition 46 limit. And that won't be done until we have our final budget meeting on the 13th, is when we will set the final number overall. But as I say, you're probably looking somewhere between 75 and 85% for the Board of Ed of what is available.
But we'll be receiving something official from the Board of Finance on April 13th.
After our April 13th meeting, you will be told exactly what you're going to get.
Okay, so we'll be hearing again something official right prior to the annual town meeting and the referendum.
Pretty much, yep. Unfortunately. Mrs. Perkins, did you have anything else? I thought I saw your hand there. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else from the board, then we'll go on to correspondence and announcements. The only two announcements I have right now are the public hearing will be the 6th, as I just read. And the notice is on the is on the town website. You will be getting an agenda for that. And
Should be posted in the,
budget,
I'm sorry, it should be posted in, on this coming Friday in the Stock Villager,
Right.
because I sent in the ad.
right. It will be, Karen just let me know that it should be in this Friday's Villager as well. But you will be receiving a agenda for that shortly. And then the 13th, we will set our final budget. And then we'll go on from there. Hopefully, we will be able to have a town meeting and a referendum this year. All we can do is hope for the best. All right, now, next order of business is adjournment. Someone care to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you,
I'll
Jeff.
second.
Second. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you all. Have a good night and be safe.
Night, everybody.